Keir Starmer finally resigned, and he hasn't been replaced by someone who's going to make everything great. He's just replaced by a guy who believes the same thing.
Wolf in sheep's clothing. Andy Burnham will come in and he'll have a little honeymoon period, then his popularity will plummet. They're all just trying to get the last sip of the poison chalice, which is being a Labor Party Prime Minister. There's just no going back.
Anyway, Keir Starmer resigns. What's your thought on that? Keir Starmer finally resigns. I don't know if it's just the result of immigration failures, the marches, the UK rape gang report. There's so much going on. Again, I don't think he cares. I think he gave a nice speech. He probably gets a great pension. He's done his thing. He gets to move on. He'll write a book one day. I don't think he really cares. But he's resigned, and he hasn't been replaced by someone who's going to make everything great. He's just replaced by a guy who believes the same thing and is going to do the same, vote the same way anyway. So what's your thoughts on what's happening in the UK? Joel, to you first, and then Scotty.
Yeah, it's a new name, but it's the same sort of guy. New name and new face, but same policies. Look, he was basically taken out by his own party. There are at least 70 MPs from Labor that were backing another person. Ed might be able to help me with the name.
West Streeting.
Andy Burnham.
Andy. Yeah.
Andy Burnham's the other guy. West Streeting was the other that was challenging about a month ago. West Streeting was trying, yeah.
He won't challenge,
So Andy Burnham, who won that by-election, which has been a Labor seat for 120 years, and he is any Labor minister that's connected to this government is basically going to be toxic for the election by 2029. So they couldn't really pick a minister to be the new leader. Andy Burnham, over the next month or so, in September, they'll have a new leader. I'm expecting it's Andy Burnham. And it's really interesting because the Reform and the Restore parties are going to have to work out how to stop splitting the vote. And there's very simple solutions to that. But if they want to beat Andy Burnham and keep Labor at bay, they're going to have to work out a way to move together forward. I mean, Rupert Lowe and Nigel, I don't know if they're going to have to run primaries in certain seats and, may the best man win and then run at the election in the actual runoff against Labor. But they're going to need to find a way to not jam each other up at the election because it'll split the vote. The same thing happened to Marine Le Pen in France, where the Green and Teal candidates, let's say, they didn't run in certain seats, and then the Labour Party of France ran unopposed, and the right-wing vote was split across multiple parties. And so there was coordination on the left, but there wasn't on the right. The right-wingers split the vote, and they kept Le Pen out, Le Pen's party. And that's exactly how I would take out Reform and Restore in Great Britain. I'd team up with the Greens and the Lib Dems that are left-wing over there, and I'd cut a deal with them and say, we won't run here, you guys run there. The right-wingers are incapable of doing that, as we can see in Australia. So the right-wingers are going to have to come up with the primary system if they want to win the election by 2029. If I was Andy Burnham, I'd do an election now because they're so split.
Yeah, I mean, wolf in sheep's clothing. Andy Burnham will come in and he'll, have a little honeymoon period, probably only a week or two, I think. Then his popularity will plummet, and they'll be in the same scenario. I think they're all just trying to get the last sip of the poison chalice, which is being a Labor Party Prime Minister. I think the Labor Party has so killed any integrity, any credibility that they've had in a 2-year period, and obviously for 14 years in opposition between 2010 and 24. And there's just no going back. And I think you've seen the shift on the left. The Greens Party overwhelmingly more popular in the opinion polls than Labor at the moment. Obviously, you've got Reform replacing the Tories, and obviously a splinter further right on Restore, who polled pretty well for their first national by-election result. So there's all of this happening, and I just think, I think the Labor Party are damned over there. I really do. I just don't think there's any going back. I think the British people are generally not a pessimistic people, but when they've made their mind up, they've made their mind up, and I think they have on both the Labor and the Conservative Party over there.
How much of you think the timing of this has anything to do with that UK gang rape report? Just one of the things that, Keir Starmer's, I don't know if you guys have read it, but just for example, it's alleged that as the Director of Public Prosecutions, he let 13,000 suspected rape gang members and pedophiles off with warning letters. Do you think this has played any role? That they knew this report was coming out, the timing of it? If it's right there, Scotty, have you got any thoughts around? It just got to, hey, we're going to do something about this. This is going to come up anyway. Let's move on before they dig too deeper, or?
Yeah, Rupert Lowe. This is Rupert Lowe's report. Rupert drove this thing, financed this thing, pushed this thing, and he's taken out the Prime Minister with it. 110%. I completely think that played a massive part. Ironically, weirdly, Rupert's been copping flack this last couple of days now for some comments he's made about ethno-nationalism and the British people and softening some of his message, and he's had some of his stronger supporters pull back from supporting Restore as well. The UK is a shit fight. It's trying to find its way forward. People emerge, bubble up. There's movements. There's, everything's in flux right now. At the same time that Starmer resigns, Rupert Lowe's copping flack from some of his base for softening his message. And all of this is playing out as we're watching it. Fascinating times. The UK is damned. There's no way out of this for them without blood, I fear, and I hate to say it, but I just don't see how the UK it's not going to vote its way out of this now. Andy Burnham, next man up, and he will do exactly what the last guy did. And let's also remember that on the same day that Anthony Albanese delivered his message about the fuel crisis, if you guys remember, I was down in Canberra at the time when he did that announcement, the big hullabaloo about nothing. Starmer also made an announcement saying that this babble about, I can't remember his words exactly, but it was along the lines of, we're not doing Brexit anymore. We're tying back into the European Union and recommitting ourselves back to where we should be. We're done with this nonsense. And, kind of 3 months later, Starmer's gone. And another irony as well is that Ukraine used British-made Storm Shadow missiles on Starmer's last day to launch attacks into Russia. So all of it just comes at you nonstop. This cycle of news and violence, and it also occurred to me that I don't see how we don't have some level of grooming gang activity happening in Australia, New Zealand, Canada, a lot of the Western countries where these same people went to. I just don't see how that isn't happening here as well. It must be happening. It might be in a more limited form, but there's no way it could be of this scale in the UK and not be happening in these other countries. They took the same bloody people in. We took the same people in. Are you saying that didn't happen? So yeah, the UK, damned. A terrible road and path to be on for them. Next man up, Andy, your turn.
Between reading this report and I'll come back to you, Edward. Between reading this report, then I watched a podcast with Sean Ryan, and he had on I can't remember her name, unfortunately, but it was basically about the whole foster care system in America. Have you guys listened to this podcast yet? If you haven't already, I'll send it to you guys. Worth a listen. Anyone watching this, go and listen to this as well. The reason I say it's important, it's the foster care system, 330,000 at any given time in the foster care system in America, right? The numbers are probably more like 450,000. But the percentages of kids that are being trafficked, raped, abused, who are fostered kids already, not to sidetrack this conversation, but it's just in line with the same stuff. And it's like systemically covered up because of funding and bureaucrats and kids go missing from the foster care system and they write it off as like, oh yeah, they're probably with their auntie. Like it's that extreme. And listening to that, I'm like, well, we got the foster care system in Australia. Stuff would be going on here at huge levels. We know it happens in some of the different communities in the outback as well. Some of the stuff that goes on is horrific. I've been around it and seen it myself. I think it's alarming. And I think this report, I hope it doesn't get like sort of brushed under the rug. I hope more and more people keep talking about it. I know basically every political commentator in the States has been doing pieces on this. I'd love to have George here next week when we dive into it at a larger scale. But go, Edward. I know you're waiting to say something. I just wanted to mention that podcast from Sean Ryan, incredible podcast, in line with this drama as well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with Scotty as well. There has to be a level of those same rape grooming gangs happening in Australia because we've got comparable demographics. We've got those same people coming in, and you've got a society that does not value children. It doesn't value innocence. And we can touch on a debate that's come up this week as it pertains to abortion on the right wing as well here in Australia. But overwhelmingly, there are these ethnic enclaves in Western Sydney, in the outer suburbs of Melbourne, absolutely ripe for the exact same sort of thing that's happened over in the UK with these grooming gangs. So Joel and I spoke about it on the podcast last week. There has to be an investigation. There is no reason why One Nation should not come out tomorrow and say, we are calling for an investigation into whether this is happening in Australia or not. Otherwise, it's going to be years and years and years before anything is done, before there's any sort of proactive, report or inquiry done, before this becomes potentially a national scandal. And I think it's just got to be something that is addressed. And it's no surprise that we've got a level of, callous lack of care about this sort of thing that is being pushed under the rug. 250,000 women allegedly raped, and it's just not being addressed by the mainstream parties or mainstream media. And obviously you can see that's going to be the case when we don't value human life. We don't value innocence. And the abortion debate has cropped up this week as well. If we are going to be so happy to just shut up about the murder of 80,000 innocent babies every single year in Australia, way more across the Western world, 30% of Gen Z, my generation, aborted, there's not going to be outrage over this sort of thing. I mean, it's a very dire stage that we're in at the moment. But this is consistent with human nature. If we're not going to care and value life in its most innocence, that's going to carry out. And certainly, if it inconveniences the major parties to talk about it, there's going to be no standing on principle to do it because they just don't have those principles.
Couldn't agree more, Edward. As you were talking, I was just reading some of these points I've got from this article, and it's crazy. Go ahead, Scotty. I'm just a little bit sidetracked reading some of these stats.
I was going to say some prominent nationalist accounts this week talking about abortion on X, and I saw Ed waded into that argument there and made a really good point that if we're not going to stand on our values regarding things like abortion, which I believe tie into the immigration debate in this country, I think they're intrinsically linked, and I believe that it's an argument that needs to be prosecuted, and we need to try and save as many lives as we can so that we don't have to justify bringing people into the country at the rates that we are. And if we're going to be comfortable with the levels of abortion that we let happen in Australia, and even the late term stuff and the things that we've all learned recently about how some of this is being promoted and pushed and carried out, man, it's shocking. It's awful. It ties into the undermining of our culture, the values of us as a society. We talk about values constantly. You're going to hear about values nonstop for the next 2 years in Australia. This has to be one of our principal values, that we value life, that we value children, that we value the future of the country. And we need to shut the gates and make sure that we encourage Australians to have more babies. That's what has to happen. There's no other way around that. And we don't want any more, we don't want grooming gangs, and we don't want foster children being abused either. So all of these systems, once again, highlighting the massive failings in structures in our society that continue to let us down and prove that they're not fit for purpose.
I hope you enjoyed that clip. If you want to watch the full podcast and see the rest of the shenanigans we got up to, click here. You can watch the full podcast. And also, don't forget to subscribe, like, leave a comment. We'd love to hear from you guys, and I'll see you guys later.